I'm sitting at the kitchen table at 2:13 in the morning, and the fluorescent light above me hums like it knows something I don't. My hands won't stop shaking. There are bills spread across the wood, envelopes with red stamps, final notices, one already torn open with the word collections underlined in ink that feels like accusation. My phone sits face down because I can't answer one more call from a number I don't recognize. The calculator next to my coffee mug blinks a negative number I've checked 6 times, hoping somewhere between refresh number 3 and refresh number 6 that the math would change, that zeros would multiply, that somehow the universe would correct itself while I wasn't looking. It hasn't. The number is the same. The whole is the same. And my chest feels like it's collapsing inward, like my ribs are too small for my lungs, like I can't pull in enough air to think, and I can't think clearly enough to pray, and I can't pray honestly enough to believe anything will be different when the sun comes up. If you're cornered by life right now, if the money's not adding up and every door feels locked from the inside, if you've done the math so many times your eyes blur and the answer never changes, this one's for you. No way out, then God split the road ahead. When you can't move forward and you can't go back, when every human option has run dry and you're staring at a wall of water with an army closing in behind you, God is not out of options. He never was. He's just waiting for you to stop running long enough to see what he's been preparing all along. You're going to hear about the night I sat frozen over bills I couldn't pay, the exact 4-minute prayer that steadied my chest when I thought my heart would give out, how Exodus 14 turned my panic into a path I didn't know existed, and a simple practice you can use tonight, right where you are right now, with trembling hands and a calculator that won't lie to make you feel better. I want to tell you it gets easier before it gets harder, but that would be a lie, and I've told myself enough of those already. The truth is this: 3 days ago, a payment bounced. Overdraft fee, $35. Yesterday, another one bounced. Today, I got a voicemail I haven't listened to yet because I already know the voice before I press play. Polite but firm, the kind that says, "We need to discuss your account," in a tone that makes your stomach drop. I know what comes next. I've been here before, but this time feels different. This time, the gap between what I owe and what I have isn't something I can close by cutting back. I've already cut. No subscriptions left to cancel. No dinners out to skip. I've been meal prepping rice and beans for 2 weeks, and I still came up $300 short. The math doesn't math. And somewhere underneath the panic, underneath the shame, a darker thought starts whispering in a voice that sounds too much like my own. Maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I'm just bad at life. Maybe God helps other people, but not me. There's a final notice from the electric company half buried under a credit card statement I don't want to touch. There's a medical bill from 8 months ago that I thought I'd handled, but apparently handled just meant ignored until it grew teeth. There's a text from my landlord from this morning asking if everything's okay, and I haven't answered because pride won't let me say the word no out loud, won't let me admit that I'm 29 years old and I can't keep my lights on, can't afford the copay, can't meet my friend for coffee because $4.50 might as well be $400. I declined her invitation yesterday, told her I was busy. I wasn't. I was just broke, and I couldn't figure out how to explain that without crying, so I lied instead. Now I'm alone at this table with bills I can't pay, and a phone I can't answer, and a heart that won't stop racing, and I keep thinking about Israel. Exodus 14. I've read it 100 times, maybe more, but tonight it doesn't feel like ancient history. It feels like my diary. They're trapped. The Red Sea stretches out in front of them, cold and impossible, waves lapping at the sand like a taunt. Behind them, Pharaoh's army is closing in. 600 chariots, the sound of hooves on stone, the dust cloud rising, men shouting orders, swords catching the moonlight. There's no bridge, no boat, no plan, just water and wheels and the terrible weight of their own bad decisions. And they do what I've been doing for 72 hours straight. They panic. They turn on Moses. They say, "Were there no graves in Egypt? Why did you bring us out here to die?" They say, "It would have been better to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness." Translation: this is your fault. This is all your fault. We should have stayed where it was bad because at least it was predictable. I hear it in my own head. The same accusation on repeat. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have taken that job that didn't work out. I should have saved more when I had the chance. I should have been smarter, faster, better with money, better with decisions, better at being an adult who doesn't sit at a kitchen table at 2 in the morning shaking over envelopes. God helps other people, not me. I see the testimonies on Sunday mornings. Money shows up in the mail, job offers arrive out of nowhere, checks come from distant relatives who heard someone was struggling, but none of that ever happens to me. I'm the exception. I'm the one he's disappointed in. I'm the Israelite complaining by the sea instead of the one who trusts. And maybe that's why I'm stuck here, because I don't have enough faith to be worth saving. My chest tightens. I try to breathe deep, but it catches halfway down, lodges somewhere near my sternum like a stone. My jaw aches. I've been clenching it without realizing, grinding my teeth in my sleep, waking up with a headache that no amount of water fixes. I'm cold, but I'm sweating. My hands tremble when I try to hold my phone steady, so I press them flat against the table to stop the shaking. It doesn't work. I refresh my bank app for the 4th time tonight, as if staring at the screen will make the numbers rearrange themselves into something survivable. They don't. I open Instagram just for a second, just to feel normal, but everyone else's life looks easy. Dinner out, new shoes, weekend trips to places I can't pronounce. I close it. I open a budgeting article someone shared last week. 10 ways to save $500 this month. I scroll through it. I've already done 9 of them. The 10th one requires a car I don't own. I close it. I'm doom-scrolling for a miracle I don't believe in, clicking through links that promise solutions I've already tried, searching for an answer that doesn't exist in the pixels of a screen at 2 in the morning. There's a physical ache in my body now, not just emotional. My shoulders are tight, hunched over like I'm bracing for impact. My stomach is knotted. I haven't eaten since lunch because anxiety kills appetite, and also because I'm trying to stretch groceries until Friday. I made a pot of rice yesterday that's supposed to last 4 days. It won't. But I'll pretend it will. I'm good at pretending. I've been pretending for weeks now. Pretending at work that everything's fine. Pretending at church that I'm blessed. Pretending in group texts that I'm just busy when really I'm just too broke and too ashamed to show up anywhere that costs money. I'm pretending I'm okay when I'm drowning, and the worst part is I don't even know who I'm pretending for anymore. God already knows. He sees the table, he sees the bills. He sees me shaking. So why do I still feel so alone? I think about them again. The Israelites by the water. It's nighttime. Families are huddled together. Mothers are holding babies who don't understand why everyone's so quiet, why the adults keep looking over their shoulders at the dust cloud getting closer. Fathers stand at the edges with nothing to offer but presence, no weapons that can match what's coming, no strategy that makes sense. And Moses is standing at the front with a staff in his hand and a word from God that must have sounded insane when he said it out loud. Fear ye not, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord which he will show to you today. For the Egyptians whom ye have seen today, ye shall see them again no more forever. The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. Stand still, while the enemy closes in, while the sea refuses to move, while everything in your body is screaming, run, fight, do something, anything, just don't stand here and wait to die. Stand still, not because it makes sense, not because it feels safe, because God said so, and God's about to do something they've never seen before. I stare at that verse in my journal. I underlined it twice last week when I was reading through Exodus, back when I thought it was just a nice story about God being faithful to people who lived 3,000 years ago. I didn't know I'd be sitting here tonight, trapped between a sea I can't cross and bills I can't pay, needing that same God to show up in my kitchen with the same kind of impossible rescue. Fear ye not, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. How? How do you stand still when everything's collapsing? How do you stop moving when you're drowning in due dates and automated payment reminders and the growing certainty that you're one emergency away from losing everything? How do you see anything when your vision's blurred with tears and you can't think past tomorrow morning? But then I hear it, quiet, underneath the hum of the fluorescent light and the roar of my own panic, a whisper that doesn't come from me. I am not late. I am here at the water's edge with you, and I have not forgotten how to part seas. I don't know if I believe it yet, but I write it down anyway, shaky handwriting on the corner of an envelope, because if there's even a chance it's true, I can't afford not to remember it. The bills are still here, the phone is still face down, the calculator still blinks the same impossible number, but something shifts just barely, like the first molecule of air moving before a wind starts to blow. I don't feel peace yet, but I feel something adjacent to it. A decision forming in the space between my ribs where the panic's been living. I'm going to stop. Just for tonight. Just for 1 hour. I'm going to stop the frantic clicking, the desperate searching, the mental math that only makes the hole deeper. I'm going to sit here in the fluorescent hum and the 2 a.m. silence and see if God shows up when I finally stop running. I push the calculator away. I close the tabs on my phone. I silence every notification. The quiet feels strange, almost loud, like my ears are ringing from the absence of noise. I take the bills and do something I should have done days ago. I sort them. 3 piles. Urgent. Due this week. Can't avoid. Negotiable. Could call and ask for an extension, a payment plan, something. Hold. Nothing I can do right now. No point torturing myself tonight. The urgent pile has 4 envelopes. The negotiable pile has 2. The hold pile has 6, and I flip them face down because looking at them won't change anything except my heart rate. Just seeing them separated, named instead of ignored, organized instead of overwhelming, eases something in my chest. Not much. Maybe 5%. But enough that I can breathe a little deeper, enough that the room doesn't feel quite so small. I grab a sticky note from the drawer, the kind I use for grocery lists, and I write 1 line in handwriting that still shakes. Stand still. See. Exodus 14:13-14. I press it onto the edge of the table, right over the number on the calculator I've been staring at for an hour. It doesn't change the debt, but it changes what I'm looking at. It changes what I'm anchoring to. Numbers or a God who splits seas. Stand still, see. I imagine what it was like that night for them, the Israelites camped by the water. The moon is out, silver light rippling across the surface of the Red Sea, beautiful and completely useless. They can hear the Egyptians now, not just the dust cloud, but the actual sound of metal on stone, hooves pounding, men shouting commands, getting closer. How long do they have? An hour? 2? Families pull their children close. Old men grip walking sticks like weapons they know won't save anyone. Young men stand at the perimeter, eyes on the horizon, hands clenched, ready to fight a battle they can't win. And Moses stands there, staff raised, saying the most impossible thing anyone's ever heard. Don't be afraid. Stand still. Watch what God does. What if they laughed at him? What if someone shouted back, "Stand still? Are you insane? They're going to slaughter us." What if doubt rippled through the camp, whispers spreading like wildfire? He doesn't know what he's doing. We're going to die here. We should have never left Egypt. What if Moses himself, standing there with his arm raised and his voice steady, felt his own knees shaking underneath his robe, felt his own heart hammering, wondered if he heard God right, if maybe he misunderstood, if maybe this is where it all ends. But he says it anyway. Stand still. And he means it. Not because he's fearless, because God told him to. I sit with that for a long time, longer than I've sat still in days. What if standing still isn't about doing nothing? What if it's about refusing to do the wrong thing out of panic? What if it's about choosing trust over hustle, presence over performance, faith over frantic fixes that only make things worse? What if God is already fighting battles I can't see, moving pieces I don't know are on the board, arranging outcomes I haven't imagined, aligning help I didn't ask for? What if my job isn't to split the sea? What if my job is just to stand where he told me to stand and watch what he does? Before the waters part, I often still your heart. The whisper comes again, and this time I don't push it away. I let it sit next to me at the table, let it share the space with the bills and the panic and the shame. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know how the money's going to show up or the path's going to appear, but I know I can't keep doing this, can't keep running in circles, can't keep refreshing apps at 2 in the morning hoping the numbers will change by sheer force of staring. Something has to shift, and maybe that something is me. I decide to try something. It feels small, maybe even silly, but I don't have anything else left. I set a timer on my phone for 4 minutes. I break it into 5 steps, and I name it in my head. Stand. Not because I'm clever, but because I need something to hold on to, something I can repeat when the panic tries to sprint back. Su, slow breath. 30 seconds. I close my eyes. Breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 4, out for 6. My chest resists at first, tight and stubborn, but by the 3rd breath something softens. Just a little. Enough. T. Tell God the truth in one sentence. I whisper it out loud, even though I feel ridiculous talking to the ceiling in my kitchen at 2 in the morning. God, I don't know how to fix this, and I'm scared you won't. The words hang in the air. I wait for lightning. It doesn't come, just the hum of the light and the sound of my own breathing. I anchor a verse. I pull up Exodus 14:13-14 on my phone and read it out loud, slow, tasting every word like it might mean something if I let it. Fear ye not, stand still, and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will show to you today. For the Egyptians whom ye have seen today, ye shall see them again no more forever. The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. I don't feel it yet. The words don't erase the bills or refill my account, but I say them anyway because maybe faith starts with speaking truth before you feel it. N. Name one next faithful step. Not 10 steps, not a master plan, not a vision board or a 5-year strategy. One step. Tomorrow morning, I'll call the medical billing office. I'll ask for a payment plan. That's it. That's the only thing I'm committing to right now. D. Don't flee. Stay put for 1 more minute. I sit. I don't scroll. I don't open my bank app again. I don't plan or solve or strategize. I just sit with God in the quiet and let the fluorescent light hum over both of us like a prayer I don't have words for yet. When the timer goes off, I feel different, not fixed, not debt-free, not suddenly confident or fearless or filled with the kind of faith that moves mountains, but steadier. Like the ground under my feet is a little more solid than it was 4 minutes ago, like maybe I'm not alone at this table after all. I write down the phone call I'm going to make tomorrow. Medical billing, 9 a.m., ask for payment plan, and I close my laptop. I don't open my bank app. I don't check my email. I don't scroll through articles promising miracles I can't manufacture. 1 hard phone call tomorrow instead of 10 hopeless clicks tonight. That's the trade. That's the obedience. That's the step. Stand still, see. The room is still the same. The bills are still stacked in 3 piles. The calculator still blinks red. The phone is still face down. But something inside me has shifted, like I've stopped trying to outrun the sea and started waiting for the one who knows how to part it. I don't know what tomorrow looks like. I don't know if the medical office will say yes. I don't know where the rest of the money's going to come from, or how long this is going to take, or if I'll ever stop feeling like I'm one emergency away from collapse. But I know this. I'm standing still, and I'm going to see what God does. The phone call happens at 9:07 the next morning, and my hands are shaking so hard I almost drop my coffee mug while I dial. I've rehearsed what I'm going to say 6 different ways: casual, apologetic, confident, desperate, and none of them feel right. So I settle on honest, which is the only thing I have left anyway. The line rings twice. A woman answers. Her voice is neutral, professional, the kind that's heard 1,000 versions of this conversation before. I explain, words tumbling out clumsy and quiet, that I can't pay the full amount, but I can do $50 a month if they'll let me. There's a pause. Long enough that I think she's going to say no. Long enough that I'm already preparing my next sentence, the one where I beg. But then she says, "Let me see what I can do." And there's the sound of typing, and 3 minutes later she's setting up a payment plan. No interest, no late fees, just $50 a month until it's clear. I hang up and sit there staring at my phone like it just turned into Moses' staff, like I just watched it split water I thought was permanent. 1 call, 1 extension, 1 step onto dry ground I didn't believe existed 10 minutes ago. It's not the whole sea, but it's proof the sea can part. And proof changes everything. I spend the rest of the morning moving different than I did yesterday. Not faster, not with more confidence, but with something underneath the fear now. Something that feels like foundation. I make a list. Top 3 actions for today. Not 20. Not a complete financial overhaul. 3. 1. List items to sell online. 2. Text my contact about freelance editing work. 3. Cancel 2 subscriptions I forgot I still had. I do number 1 before I even finish my coffee. 12 minutes to photograph 3 things I don't use. Write quick descriptions. Post them to the marketplace. By the time I'm pouring my second cup, one of them already has a message. Is this still available? My hands tremble again, but this time it's not panic. It's hope wearing panic's clothes, Hope that doesn't know how to introduce itself yet without shaking. I think about Israel again, but different now. Not trapped by the sea, walking through it. Exodus 14:21 plays in my head. And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea. And the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. All that night, not instantly, not in a cinematic flash of lightning and thunder. God used wind, steady, strong, sustained. The path opened gradually, but it opened decisively, and by morning there was a road where there had only been water 6 hours before. That's what this feels like. Not instant, not loud, but opening. The item sells by noon for $60. I stare at the notification like it's a burning bush. $60 I didn't have yesterday. $60 that showed up because I stopped doom scrolling and started doing the next faithful thing in front of me. It's not enough to solve everything, but it's enough to prove that God's not done, that the path isn't finished forming, that maybe, if I keep walking what he opens, more will open ahead. But walking requires knowing where to step, and I've been so panicked for so long I've lost the rhythm of discernment. I've been operating on survival mode, reacting instead of responding, scrambling instead of seeking. So I pull out my notebook again, the same one where I wrote the stand reset last night, and I draw 3 columns. I label them with the only framework that makes sense to me right now. C. Pharaoh. Staff. It's Moses' moment distilled. He had a staff, not a solution. He had obedience, not outcomes. God did the rest. I need to see it the same way, not as one giant impossible problem, but as 3 distinct categories I can actually name. C. What looks impossible right now? I write it down. $2,400 in debt I can't cover this month. Pharaoh. What's chasing me? What's closing in? What won't wait? I list them. Due dates, collection calls, the rent check I haven't written yet, the conversation with my landlord I'm avoiding. Staff. What's already in my hand, what God gave me before the crisis, what I keep overlooking because it feels too small. I pause here. I almost skip it. Because what do I have? But I force myself to write. 2 evenings free this week. A skill set. I can write, I can edit, I can tutor high schoolers in English. A closet full of things I don't use anymore. 3 contacts who mentioned freelance work months ago when I was too busy to respond. A best friend who keeps asking if I'm okay. I stare at the staff column. I've been so focused on what I don't have that I haven't asked what I do have. The answer isn't nothing. It's just small. It's just ordinary. And maybe that's the whole point. God doesn't need me to show up with abundance or a perfect plan. He needs me to show up with what's in my hand and trust him to multiply it, stretch it, turn it into something that splits seas. You do not need more self-punishment. You need my presence in your planning. The whisper comes while I'm staring at the notebook, and it lands like a hand on my shoulder. I've been at war with myself for weeks, angry that I'm here, ashamed that I didn't see it coming, resentful that other people seem to have it easier. I've been cycling through every version of if only I had and why didn't I until my thoughts are just noise. But what if the enemy isn't just the debt? What if it's the voice in my head that says, I deserve this, that I'm too broken to be helped, that God's tired of rescuing me? What if the fight God wants to win isn't just against my bills, it's against my self-hatred? I read Exodus 14:14 again, slower this time, letting the weight of it settle. The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. What if holding my peace doesn't mean sitting silent while the world falls apart? What if it means stopping the war I'm waging against myself and starting to walk with him instead? What if he's not asking me to have it all figured out before I move? What if he's asking me to bring what I have, $60 and a skill set and 2 free evenings, and take the next step he's opened and trust that he'll meet me there? I text the contact, the one who mentioned editing work back in June. I keep it simple, no desperation, just honest. Hey, still doing freelance projects? I've got some availability if you need help. I hit send before I can overthink it, before shame can convince me I'm bothering her, before fear can whisper that she'll say no and I'll be right back where I started. The message goes through. I set my phone down. I breathe. 30 minutes later she responds. Actually, yes. Can you hop on a call tomorrow? I read it 3 times. My throat tightens, but not with panic this time, with something close to gratitude, something that feels like a door cracking open in a hallway I thought was all locked rooms. I write back, absolutely. And then I sit there at the table, the same table where I was shaking 12 hours ago, and I let the tears come. Not desperate tears, relief tears. The kind that happen when you realize you're not as alone as you thought, when you see evidence that God's been working in places you couldn't see, when you understand that maybe, just maybe, standing still wasn't passivity. It was positioning. Before God moves the sea, he stills the soul. I cancel the 2 subscriptions that afternoon. Both of them are things I signed up for months ago and forgot about. $9.99 a month here, $12.99 there. Little leaks I didn't notice because I was too overwhelmed to check. Cancelling them takes 4 minutes total, $23 a month back in my pocket. It's not transformative, but it's something. Another brick in the path. Another piece of dry ground appearing under my feet. By evening, I've worked the overtime shift my manager approved last week. 4 extra hours. It's exhausting. My feet ache, my back is tight, I'm too tired to cook, so I eat the rice I prepped yesterday. But it's also income. Money I didn't have this morning. Another $68 after taxes. I write it down in my notebook next to the 60 from the sale. 128. Still not enough to cover everything, but enough to cover something. Enough to pay the urgent bill at the top of the pile. Enough to prove that when I stop spiraling and start stepping, God meets me in the movement. But fear doesn't leave quietly. It never does. On day 5, 5 days of waking up early, doing the stand reset, taking the next faithful step, watching small provisions show up, fear sprints back in the middle of the night like it owns the place. I wake at 3 a.m. in a cold sweat, heart pounding, the thought hitting me sharp and fast. What if the waters close? What if this is temporary? What if you take 3 steps forward and fall 10 steps back and end up worse than where you started? I lie there staring at the ceiling, pulse racing, the old familiar panic flooding back in. The bills are smaller now, but they're still there. The path is visible, but it's narrow, too narrow. The walls of water on either side feel close, and I can't stop thinking about what happens if they collapse, if I get halfway through and the sea decides it's done being split, if I drown in the middle of obedience because I didn't move fast enough or trust hard enough or pray right enough. I get up. I sit at the table again, the same spot, the same fluorescent hum. I pull out my phone and read the verse again. The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. I do the stand reset in the dark, whispering the steps out loud because I need to hear my own voice say something true. Slow breath. Tell God the truth. I'm still scared, but I'm walking anyway. Anchor the verse. Name the next step. Keep walking what's open. Don't invent shortcuts. Don't sprint ahead. Don't flee. Stay put, even when fear says run. My fight for you often looks like wisdom arriving, help aligning, and steps appearing, one dry footprint at a time. I write it in my journal. I don't know if I fully believe it yet, but I'm starting to, because the evidence is stacking up. Slow, small, steady. The payment plan, the $60 sale, the freelance call tomorrow, the cancelled subscriptions, the overtime hours. None of them are loud. None of them are the kind of miracle you'd post about or testify about in front of a crowd. But they're real. They're footprints in sand that wasn't dry a week ago. They're proof that God's fighting, even when his fight looks like a friend texting back, a manager saying yes, a stranger buying something you don't need anymore. The next morning, I have the call, 30 minutes. She needs someone to edit a series of articles, 10 of them, $50 each, $500 total, due in 2 weeks, but she's flexible if I need more time. I take it. I don't negotiate. I don't hesitate. I say yes like it's the only word I know, and when we hang up I sit there staring at my notebook where I've written $500 in the margin, and I understand something I didn't before. Provision travels the path of obedience. It doesn't show up before I move, it shows up when I move. When I make the call I'm scared to make. When I list the item I'm too proud to sell. When I cancel the subscription I'm too tired to remember. When I say yes to the work even though I'm exhausted. When I stop waiting for the sea to part before I step and start stepping because God said to stand still and see, and seeing requires walking what he opens, not waiting for him to open everything at once. Walk what God opens. By the end of week 1, I've paid 2 bills. marked them paid in green pen, and moved them to a separate pile I'm calling evidence. I've scheduled another one on autopay. Small amounts, manageable, no more weight than I can carry. I've negotiated one extension. I've earned $128 I didn't have 7 days ago. I've got 500 more coming in 2 weeks if I finish the editing project. I have a written plan taped inside the cupboard door. Not a miracle, but a map. Bills organized by urgency. Income sources listed. Next steps color-coded. It's not beautiful, but it's clear. And clarity, I'm learning, is mercy in motion. The room isn't richer, but I am. Not in dollars, in steadiness, in trust, in the knowledge that God fights for his people, not always by removing the obstacle, but by walking them through it. Not always by changing circumstances overnight, but by changing me in the middle of them. Not always by making the sea disappear, but by making a road through the sea so dry I can walk it without sinking. And when I get to the other side, I'm not the same person who stood trembling at the edge. I'm steadier. I know his voice better. I trust his timing more. I've learned that panic multiplies problems, and stillness isn't passivity. It's positioning. I've learned that before God moves the sea, he often stills the soul, because a steady heart can walk a narrow path that a frantic heart would stumble on. Stand still, sea. I tape the verse to my bathroom mirror. Exodus 14:13-14, full text, handwritten on an index card. It's the first thing I see every morning now, before I check my phone, before I let the world tell me what to fear. Fear ye not, stand still, and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will show to you today. For the Egyptians whom ye have seen today, ye shall see them again no more forever. The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. And every morning I do the reset. 4 minutes. Stand. Slow breath, tell the truth, anchor the verse, name the step, don't flee. Then I write my top 3 actions, and I execute number 1 before I do anything else. It's becoming liturgy, not because it's magical, because it's faithful, because it keeps my eyes on the one who parts seas instead of on the seas themselves, because it reminds me that my job isn't to split water, it's to walk the path he's already opening, 1 footprint at a time, and the path keeps opening. 3 weeks in, and I'm sitting at the same kitchen table, but the air feels different now. The bills are still here, some of them anyway, but they're not chaos anymore. They're organized. 2 marked paid in green ink, 1 on autopay, $50 a month, manageable. 3 still waiting, but with due dates I can actually meet if I keep walking this path. The editing project is half done, $250 already deposited, the rest coming when I finish. My manager extended the overtime for another month. The freelance contact referred me to someone else who needs help with a newsletter. Small streams becoming a river I didn't see coming. But there's something else happening underneath the relief, something harder to name, a reckoning. Because now that I'm not drowning, now that I can breathe without my chest constricting, I have space to ask the question I've been avoiding since the night this all started. How did I get here? Not just financially, spiritually, emotionally. How did I become someone who sits alone at 2 a.m. shaking over bills, too ashamed to ask for help, too proud to admit I'm struggling, too convinced that God helps everyone but me? When did I start believing that my worth was tied to my bank account? That struggle meant failure, that needing rescue meant I wasn't faithful enough to avoid the trap in the first place? I think I've been running from this question for years. Medicating it with busyness, numbing it with distraction, covering it with competence so no one would look close enough to see the cracks. But the cracks are visible now. The facade came down the night I couldn't pay my bills, and now I'm standing in the rubble of my own self-reliance, and I don't know how to rebuild without first understanding what I was building on. You do not need more self-punishment. You need my presence in your planning. The whisper comes again, but this time it lands different. Not as comfort, as confrontation. Because I've been punishing myself for weeks, maybe years, and calling it responsibility. I've been at war with my own humanity, angry at myself for needing things, for struggling, for not being stronger or smarter or more bulletproof. And somewhere in that war, I stopped believing God could love me in the mess. I started believing he only loved the version of me that had it all together. The one who never stumbled, never doubted, never sat at a table at 2 a.m. with bills she couldn't pay. But that version of me doesn't exist. She never did. And I'm starting to wonder if the real crisis wasn't the money at all. It was the lie I believed about what happens when I fall apart. I grab my journal and I write one question at the top of a blank page. What am I really afraid of? Not the bills, deeper. What's underneath the panic, the shame, the self-hatred? I write, being exposed, being seen as weak, being too much, being not enough, being a burden, being forgotten, being unworthy of rescue. The pen moves faster now, like something's breaking open. Being the kind of Christian who doesn't have enough faith to avoid trouble. Being proof that God's promises don't work for people like me. Being abandoned by the God I've been serving for years because I finally asked for too much. I stare at the words and my throat tightens. That's it. That's the core wound. Not the debt. The belief that I'm only worth loving when I don't need anything. That my value is contingent on my ability to hold it all together. That the moment I become too broken or too needy or too honest, God, like everyone else, will decide I'm not worth the effort. Where did you learn that? The question isn't audible, but it's there, gentle and relentless. Where did I learn that love is conditional? That struggle equals failure? That needing help means I'm broken beyond repair? I close my eyes and I let myself go back. Not just to last month, further. To childhood dinner tables where money was tight and tension was thick, where my parents fought in whispers they thought I couldn't hear, where I learned early that financial stress meant relational fracture, that not having enough meant something was fundamentally wrong with us. I remember being 8 years old, standing in a grocery store while my mum put items back because the total was too high, and the look on her face, shame and rage tangled together, and the way she didn't speak the whole drive home. I remember learning that money problems were something you hid, something you fixed alone, something you never ever talked about out loud because talking about it meant admitting you failed. I learned to be competent, to never need too much, to carry my own weight and everyone else's if necessary, because needing help was the worst kind of weakness. I learned that if I could just be good enough, smart enough, responsible enough, I could avoid the shame I saw on my mother's face that day in the grocery aisle. I could avoid the fights. I could avoid being the problem. And I carried that into adulthood like a backpack full of stones. I open my eyes. Tears are streaming down my face now, hot and quiet. I'm 30 years old and I'm still that 8-year-old girl, terrified of being too much, convinced that if I just perform better I'll be worth keeping. I'm still running from the shame I saw on my mother's face, still trying to earn my way out of struggle, still believing that financial crisis means moral failure. But what if it doesn't? What if being trapped by the Red Sea didn't mean Israel was unfaithful? What if it meant they were exactly where God wanted them, so he could show them who he is? I flip to Exodus 14 in my Bible and I read the whole chapter this time, not just the verses I've been clinging to. Verse 1. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, that they turn and encamp before Pihahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, over against Baalzephon, before it shall ye encamp by the sea. God told them to camp there, at the water's edge, with Pharaoh closing in. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a consequence of their lack of faith. It was the plan. God positioned them in an impossible situation so that when he delivered them, there would be no question who did it. For Pharaoh will say of the children of Israel, They are entangled in the land, the wilderness hath shut them in. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, that he shall follow after them. And I will be honored upon Pharaoh and upon all his host, that the Egyptians may know that I am the Lord. Exodus 14:3-4, KJV. God set this up, not to punish them, to honor himself, to reveal who he is in a way that wouldn't be possible if they could have rescued themselves. My chest cracks open. What if my crisis wasn't evidence that God abandoned me? What if it was the stage he set to show me who he is when I can't save myself? I sit with that for a long time, letting it reshape everything I thought I knew about the last 3 weeks. The night I sat shaking over bills. What if God was there, not punishing my lack of faith, but positioning me for a revelation I couldn't receive any other way? The phone call I was terrified to make. What if that was the staff in my hand? The ordinary obedience that became the crack in the sea? The $60 sale, the freelance work, the overtime, the payment plan. What if all of it was God fighting for me, not because I earned it, but because that's who he is? I do not ask you to split seas. I ask you to stand where I tell you and watch what I do. I grab my pen and I write it down, pressing hard enough that the ink bleeds through to the next page. God positioned me in an impossible situation so that when He delivers me, I will know, beyond any doubt, that it was Him. This isn't about my competence, it's about His character. This isn't about my faith being strong enough, it's about His faithfulness being constant. This isn't about me performing my way into worthiness. It's about Him loving me when I have nothing to offer but honesty and trembling hands and a willingness to stand still when everything in me wants to run. The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. Exodus 14:14, KJV. I've been reading that verse for weeks, but I haven't really heard it until now. The Lord shall fight, not might. Not could if you're good enough. Shall. It's a promise, not a possibility. And the fight isn't contingent on my strength. It's rooted in His nature. He fights because that's who He is. He delivers because He's the deliverer. He parts seas because He's the God who makes roads where there were none. And He doesn't need my resume or my track record or my perfect faith to do it. He just needs my presence, my honesty, my willingness to stop trying to be Him and start trusting Him. But trust requires surrender. And I've been gripping control so tightly my knuckles have been white for years. I've been trying to orchestrate outcomes, manage perceptions, fix problems before anyone notices they exist. I've been playing God in my own life, and I've been failing spectacularly, and I haven't wanted to admit it because admitting it meant facing the terror underneath. What if I let go and He doesn't catch me? I take a breath. I close my journal. I get on my knees right there in the kitchen. Something I haven't done in years because it felt too vulnerable, too theatrical, too much like the kind of prayer people do when they're really desperate. But I am really desperate, and I'm done pretending I'm not. I don't have eloquent words. I don't have a scripted prayer. I just have the truth, raw and unfiltered, the kind I've been too afraid to say out loud. God, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to stop punishing myself. I don't know how to believe You love me when I'm a mess. I don't know how to trust You with the parts of my life I can't control. I've been trying to save myself because I was afraid You wouldn't, and I'm so tired. I'm so tired of being at war with myself. I'm so tired of believing I have to earn what You've already given. I need You to fight for me, because I can't fight anymore. I'm standing still. I'm standing still, and I'm asking You to show me what You do when I finally stop trying to do Your job. The kitchen is silent. The fluorescent light hums. My knees ache against the tile, and then I feel it. Not a voice, not a vision, just a knowing that settles in my chest like a weight lifting. A knowing that says, I've been fighting for You all along. You just couldn't see it because you were too busy fighting yourself. Before the waters part, I often still Your heart. I stay on my knees for another minute, maybe two, letting the tears fall, letting the surrender settle, letting the war inside me finally cease. And when I stand, I feel lighter. Not because the bills are gone. They're not. Not because the path ahead is clear. It's not. But because I've stopped carrying the weight of being my own savior. I've stopped believing that my worth is tied to my ability to avoid crisis. I've stopped punishing the version of myself that needs rescue and started trusting the God who specializes in impossible deliverances. I text my best friend, the one who's been asking if I'm okay for weeks. I tell her the truth. I'm not okay. I've been struggling financially and I didn't know how to tell you. Can we talk? She responds in 30 seconds. I'm coming over. 20 minutes. When she arrives, I don't perform. I don't minimize. I don't pretend I've got it under control. I show her the bills. I show her the notebook with the 3 columns. C, Pharaoh, staff. I show her the sticky note on the table that says, stand still, C. I tell her about the night I sat shaking at 2 a.m., the phone call I was terrified to make, the $60 sale, the freelance work, the slow, steady path appearing one footprint at a time. And I tell her the thing I've been most afraid to say. I thought if I told you, you'd think less of me. I thought I had to have it together to be worth your time. She looks at me for a long moment, and then she says the most disarming thing. I've been where you are. 3 years ago. I just never told you because I thought you'd think less of me. We sit there staring at each other, and then we both start laughing. The kind of laughter that comes when you realize you've been hiding the same wound from each other for years, terrified of the same rejection, carrying the same lie. She pulls out her phone and shows me the budgeting sheet she sent last week, the one she said changed everything, and we spend the next hour going through my finances together. She helps me see things I missed. She suggests options I didn't know existed. She offers to lend me $200, no strings, pay it back whenever. And when I start to refuse out of pride, she stops me and says, "Let me fight for you. The way God's been fighting for you. Let someone be the body of Christ in your crisis." I take the money, I say thank you, and for the first time in weeks, maybe years, I don't feel ashamed for needing help. I feel loved. My fight for you often looks like wisdom arriving, help aligning, and steps appearing, one dry footprint at a time. When she leaves, I sit at the table and I update my notebook. The C column is smaller now, not gone, but manageable. The Pharaoh column has due dates I can meet. The staff column has grown. New income sources, new support, new evidence that I'm not alone in this. And underneath all three columns, I write one sentence in capital letters. God fights by teaching me I'm worth fighting for. That's the revelation, that's the confrontation. Not just that God is powerful enough to part seas, but that he loves me enough to part them for me. Not because I performed well enough to earn it, because he's the kind of God who rescues people who can't rescue themselves, who makes roads for people who are trapped, who fights battles for people who've been warring against their own worth for so long they forgot what peace feels like. The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. Exodus 14:14, KJV. I read it one more time before I close my journal, and this time I believe it. Not as theology, as truth. God fights for me. He's been fighting all along. And my job, the only job I've ever had, is to stand still, hold my peace, and watch what he does when I finally stop trying to be enough on my own and start trusting that I already am in him. Stand still, see. I wake up on day 23, and the first thing I do, before my feet hit the floor, before I check my phone, before the weight of the day settles on my chest, is breathe. Just breathe. 4 counts in, hold for 4, 6 counts out. It's become muscle memory now, this small act of resistance against the panic that used to own my mornings. The stand reset isn't optional anymore, it's oxygen. I sit up, grab my Bible from the nightstand. Exodus 14:13-14 is marked with 3 different colors of highlighter now, edges of the page worn soft from how many times I've turned to it in the last 3 weeks. Fear ye not, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will show to you today. For the Egyptians whom ye have seen today, ye shall see them again no more forever. The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. I read it out loud, slow, letting each word land like a stone in still water. This isn't just a verse anymore, it's a lifeline, a way of seeing, a language for the impossible that I'm learning to speak fluently. I do the full reset. 30 seconds of slow breath. 1 sentence of truth. God, I'm learning to trust that you see what I can't. Anchor the verse. Name the next step. Finish the last 2 articles for the editing project. Send the invoice. Follow up on the newsletter opportunity. Don't flee. Sit here for 1 more minute with you before the day asks me to be anything other than yours. When the timer goes off, I write my top 3 actions for the day in my notebook. Not a list of 10 anxieties. Not a spiral of what-ifs. 3 things. Concrete, doable, faithful. 1. Finish editing articles 9 and 10. 2. Send invoice for full $500. 3. Email the newsletter, contact my availability and rates. I execute number 1 before I make coffee. 2 hours of focused work. Headphones in. The kind of deep concentration I couldn't access 3 weeks ago when my brain was too fractured by fear to hold a coherent thought for longer than 90 seconds. I finish both articles by 9:30. I read them through 1 more time, fix 2 typos, export the files, attach them to an email with a professional sign-off that doesn't betray how much this $500 means to me. I hit send. Then I open a new email and write the invoice, $500, due upon receipt. I type my bank account information at the bottom and my hands don't shake. I send it, and then I sit there staring at my laptop screen like I just watched the sea split wider. By 10 a.m., she responds, "These are perfect. Processing payment now, should hit your account in 1 to 2 business days." Thanks so much. I close my laptop. I put my face in my hands. And I cry. Not desperate tears this time. Gratitude tears. The kind that happen when you realize God didn't just make a way, He made provision. When you see that obedience isn't just about avoiding consequences, it's about aligning with abundance you didn't know was waiting on the other side of the step you were too afraid to take. $500. In 2 days, it'll be in my account. That plus the $128 from the sale and overtime, plus the $200 my friend lent me, plus the $50 payments I've been making. I'm not just surviving anymore, I'm recovering. The sea isn't closed behind me yet, but I'm not standing at the edge anymore either. I'm walking, one footprint at a time, and the ground is dry. Provision travels the path of obedience. I spend the rest of the morning working on the newsletter email. I keep it short, professional, confident without being presumptuous. I outline what I can offer, weekly editing, content strategy if they need it, a rate that's fair but not desperate. I proofread it 3 times. I say a quiet prayer over it. God, if this is the next step, open it. If it's not, close it and show me what is. And I hit send before fear can rewrite the whole thing into something smaller. Then I do something I haven't done in weeks. I go for a walk. Not to clear my head, not to escape, just to be. To move my body through the world without an agenda, without a crisis to solve, without the weight of bills pressing on my shoulders like a hand pushing me underwater. I walk through my neighborhood, past houses I've passed 1,000 times but never really seen, and I notice things. The way the light filters through the trees, the sound of a dog barking 2 streets over, the smell of someone's laundry drying in the breeze. Small, ordinary things. The kind I used to miss because I was too anxious to be present, too busy trying to manufacture outcomes to notice that life was still happening around me. And I think about Israel again. Not trapped by the sea this time. Through it. Exodus 14:22. And the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon the dry ground, and the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on their left. I've read that verse before, but I never noticed the details until now. The waters were a wall. Not gone. Still there. Still towering on both sides. Still capable of collapsing if God decided to stop holding them. But they walked anyway. Eyes forward. Feet steady. Trusting that the God who opened the path would hold it open long enough for them to get to the other side. That's what this feels like. The crisis isn't over. The walls are still there. Bills I'm still paying down, income I'm still rebuilding, wounds I'm still healing from. But I'm walking. And the walls aren't collapsing, because God's holding them. I get back to my apartment and there's a text from my manager. Hey, can you do 1 more month of overtime? We're short-staffed and you've been great. 1 more month, 4 more hours a week, another $270 a month. I text back immediately, yes, thank you. And I add it to my notebook under the staff column, another stream, another piece of provision showing up exactly when I need it, like breadcrumbs on a path I couldn't see from the starting line. By the end of the week, the $500 hits my account. I check my banking app at 7 a.m. and the notification is there, glowing on my screen like a promise kept. I transfer $300 immediately to cover the 2 urgent bills I've been holding. I put $100 toward the negotiated payment plan to get ahead. I keep $100 as a buffer. The first time in a month I've had anything resembling margin, breathing room, a cushion between me and catastrophe. I sit at the table and I update my spreadsheet. The one my friend helped me build, color-coded and organized. Bills in 1 column, income in another, a 3rd column for what's left. For the first time since this started, the 3rd column is positive. Not by much. $137. But positive. More coming in than going out. Evidence that the math can math when God's doing the multiplication. I want to celebrate. I want to call someone, post something, shout from a rooftop that I'm not drowning anymore. But something stops me. A quietness. A knowing that this moment isn't meant to be loud. It's meant to be sacred. This is the moment I look back and remember where I was, so I never forget who brought me through. I pull out my journal and I write a new heading, Divine Archaeology, what God was doing when I couldn't see it. And I start listing. Not the outcomes, the fingerprints, the moments I didn't recognize as God at the time, but now, standing on dry ground. I can see his hand all over them. The night I broke down and decided to stop the frantic clicking. That wasn't me. That was him, stilling my heart before he moved the sea. The medical billing office saying yes to a payment plan when they could have said no. That wasn't luck. That was favor. The $60 sale happening within an hour of posting. That wasn't algorithm. That was provision. My friend texting about the freelance work the same day I worked up the courage to ask. That wasn't coincidence. That was alignment. The overtime approval, the newsletter opportunity, the budgeting sheet. My best friend showing up with $200 and the permission to need help. None of it random. All of it orchestrated. I've been so focused on what wasn't happening, the bills that didn't disappear, the money that didn't fall from the sky, the instant miracle that never came, that I missed what was happening. God was fighting. Just not the way I expected, not with thunder and lightning and cinematic displays of power, but with a strong east wind blowing all night, steady and relentless, pushing back water 1 inch at a time until there was a road where there had only been impossibility. My fight for you often looks like wisdom arriving, help aligning, and steps appearing, one dry footprint at a time. I think about the Israelites on the other side of the sea, Exodus 14:30-31. Thus the Lord saved Israel that day out of the hand of the Egyptians. And Israel saw the Egyptians dead upon the seashore. And Israel saw that great work which the Lord did upon the Egyptians. And the people feared the Lord, and believed the Lord, and his servant Moses. They saw, not just the outcome, the work. They looked back, and they recognized what God had done. And it changed how they saw him going forward. It wasn't just a story anymore. It was testimony. It was evidence. It was proof that the God who brought them out of Egypt wasn't done delivering them. I need to do the same. I need to look back. Not with shame, not with regret, not with the voice that says you should have trusted sooner, but with gratitude. With eyes that see the path God was building while I was panicking, the provision he was arranging while I was despairing, the people he was positioning while I was convinced I was alone. I flip to a new page in my journal and I write, "Thank you. Thank you for the night I couldn't sleep because it forced me to my knees. Thank you for the bills I couldn't pay because they taught me I'm not my own savior. Thank you for the fear that drove me to Scripture because I found you there in ways I never had before. Thank you for the phone call I was terrified to make because it was the first footprint on dry ground. Thank you for the $60, the $500, the overtime, the friend, the favor, the path. Thank you for fighting for me when I didn't know how to fight for myself. Thank you for loving me when I had nothing to offer but honesty and trembling hands. Thank you for not needing me to be enough, because you already are." The tears come again, but they're different now. Not relief, not even gratitude exactly, something deeper. Worship, the kind that rises up from the place in your chest where fear used to live, where shame used to make a home, where self-reliance used to build walls. Worship that says, "You are who you said you are. You did what you said you'd do, and I will never forget this." I sit there for a long time, letting it wash over me, letting the truth of it settle into the broken places that are starting to heal. And then I hear it again, the whisper, quiet and close. "This is who I have always been. You're just finally still enough to see it." I close my journal. I walk to the bathroom and I look at myself in the mirror. The same mirror where I taped Exodus 14:13-14 3 weeks ago. The same face I've seen every morning, but different now. Less afraid, less ashamed, less convinced that struggle means failure. I look at the verse taped to the glass and I read it one more time, not as a prayer for rescue, but as a testimony of it. "Fear ye not, stand still, and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will show to you today. For the Egyptians whom ye have seen today, ye shall see them again no more forever. The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace." The Egyptians I saw 3 weeks ago, the fear, the shame, the self-hatred, the lie that I'm only worth loving when I don't need anything, I will never see them the same way again. They're dead on the shore, behind me, drowned in the same sea God parted to let me through. And I'm on the other side now, not because I was strong enough to swim, because he was faithful enough to split the water and hold it while I walked. Stand still. See. That night, I get an email from the newsletter contact. She wants to move forward. 12 newsletters a month, $75 each, $900 monthly, ongoing. She wants to start next week. I read it 3 times. I check the sender to make sure it's real. And then I close my laptop and I just sit there in the quiet, letting the magnitude of it settle. $900 a month. Steady. Reliable. Enough to not just survive, but to breathe. Enough to pay down the debt faster. Enough to build the margin I've been praying for. Enough to prove that God doesn't just open paths, He sustains them. I don't text anyone. I don't post about it. I just sit at the table where I shook 3 weeks ago, where I cried and panicked and almost gave up. And I whisper into the fluorescent hum, "You fight for your people, you really do." And somewhere underneath the relief, underneath the gratitude, underneath the testimony forming in my chest, I feel something I haven't felt in years. Rest. Not because the struggle is over, but because I finally believe, really believe, that I'm not in it alone. I'm awake before my alarm on day 37, and it's not panic that pulls me out of sleep this time. It's peace. The kind that doesn't make sense given the circumstances. The kind that can only come from someone outside of me holding things I can't. I do the stand reset before my feet touch the floor. It's reflex now, written into my nervous system like breathing. Slow breath. Truth. God, you've been faithful every single day. Teach me to walk like I believe it. Anchor the verse. Name the step. Start the first newsletter draft. Pay the electric bill that's no longer final notice. Call my mum. That last one surprises me. I haven't talked to my mum in 6 weeks. Not really. Just surface texts about weather and holidays and nothing that matters. Because talking to her means risking the conversation I've been avoiding my whole life. The one where I'm honest about struggling, where I stop performing competence and start admitting need, where I potentially trigger all the old patterns and shame and tightness that taught me money problems were moral failures in the first place. But something's different now. I'm different. I've watched God fight for me in ways I couldn't orchestrate, and I've learned that hiding my struggle doesn't protect me. It isolates me. And I'm tired of being isolated from the people I love because I'm too afraid to be loved in my mess. I call her after breakfast. She answers on the second ring, voice bright and surprised. "Hey, sweetheart. Everything okay?" I almost say yes. The word is right there, muscle memory, the automatic response that keeps everyone comfortable. But I stop. I breathe. And I tell her the truth. Actually, no. I mean, I'm okay now, but I haven't been. I've been struggling financially for the last month and I didn't know how to tell you. Silence. Long enough that I wonder if the call dropped. Then, why didn't you say something sooner? And there it is. The question I've been dreading. But instead of defensiveness, I just feel sad. Sad for the version of me who learned that needing help was shameful. Sad for the 8-year-old standing in the grocery aisle watching her mother's face harden with humiliation. Sad for all the years I've carried that moment like a script for how to survive. Because I learned a long time ago that struggling with money meant something was wrong with me, and I didn't want you to think I was failing. Another pause. Then her voice cracks. "I'm so sorry. I wasn't expecting that." "For what?" "For making you think that. For letting you see my shame instead of my faith. For teaching you to hide instead of ask." She's crying now. Quiet, but real. I was so scared back then. Your dad and I were barely keeping it together, and I thought if I could just control it, manage it, fix it before anyone noticed, we'd be okay. But all I did was teach you that struggle was something to be ashamed of instead of something to surrender. My throat tightens. I've spent 30 years carrying her fear without realizing it, inheriting her survival strategies, learning her language of self-reliance and shame. But I don't want to speak that language anymore. I want to speak the language I've been learning for the last 37 days. The one that says stand still, see. The one that says the Lord shall fight for you. The one that says needing rescue isn't failure. It's human. I'm learning something different now, I tell her. I'm learning that God fights for people who can't fight for themselves. And I'm learning that letting people help me isn't weakness. It's trust. She's quiet for a moment. Then, "Tell me what happened." All of it. So I do. I tell her about the bills spread across the table at 2 a.m., the shaking hands, the phone call to the medical billing office, the $60 sale, the freelance work, the friend who lent me money, the stand reset, the verse that became my lifeline, the path that appeared one footprint at a time. I tell her about the newsletter contract that starts next week, the overtime that's carrying me through, the spreadsheet that's finally showing positive numbers. I tell her about learning to stand still, about watching God split seas I thought were permanent, about discovering that his fight for me looks like wisdom and favor, and people and provision showing up exactly when I need them. When I finish, she says, "I'm so proud of you." For what? For almost drowning? For learning to swim differently than I did? For letting God fight for you instead of trying to save yourself alone? For being braver than I was? We talk for another hour. She tells me stories I've never heard, about the year they almost lost the house, about the night she sat at her own kitchen table crying over bills, about the shame that made her pull away from church because she couldn't bear to be around people who seemed to have it together. She tells me she wishes she'd known then what I'm learning now, that God's not scandalized by our need, that struggle isn't evidence of unfaithfulness, that asking for help is often the most faithful thing we can do. Before we hang up, she says, "Can I send you something?" Not much, just a little to help. Every instinct in me wants to say no, wants to prove I don't need it, wants to protect her from the burden of my struggle. But I think about my friend's words 3 weeks ago. Let me fight for you. Let someone be the body of Christ in your crisis. And I realize my mom is asking for the same thing. She's asking to participate in my deliverance. She's asking to be part of the story God's writing. And saying no doesn't protect her. It robs her of the chance to be faithful in my need. Yes, I tell her. Thank you. She sends $200 that afternoon. I sit staring at the Venmo notification, and I don't feel shame. I feel seen, loved, held by a God who fights through people, who uses mothers and friends and strangers buying things I don't need anymore, who orchestrates provision through 1,000 small hands instead of one loud miracle. My fight for you often looks like wisdom arriving, help aligning, and steps appearing, one dry footprint at a time. I spend the weekend working on the first batch of newsletters. It's good work, the kind that makes me feel useful instead of desperate, the kind that reminds me I have something to offer beyond my need. I finish all 4 by Sunday night, send them off, get a response by Monday morning. These are fantastic. Exactly what we needed. The affirmation lands different now. 3 weeks ago, I would have clung to it like proof of my worth, like evidence that I'm valuable because I'm competent. But now I hear it as confirmation, not validation. Confirmation that I'm walking the path God opened, that I'm using the staff He put in my hand, that obedience leads to provision, and provision leads to more opportunities to be faithful. I'm learning that my worth isn't tied to my output. It's tied to my identity. And my identity isn't person who has it all together. It's child of a God who fights for me when I don't. By midweek, I've paid off 3 more bills. I mark them paid in green ink and move them to the evidence pile that's growing thicker than the urgent pile ever was. I look at the spreadsheet and the numbers are undeniable. I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm recovering. Not because I worked harder or hustled smarter or manifested abundance, because I stood still long enough to see what God was doing, and then I walked the path He opened, one faithful step at a time. But the real shift happens on Thursday night. I'm at church for the first time in 5 weeks. Couldn't go before because I was too ashamed, too convinced that everyone had it together except me, too afraid someone would ask how I was doing and I'd either have to lie or fall apart. But tonight I walk in different, not because my problems are solved, because I know now that having problems doesn't disqualify me from God's presence. It positions me to see His power. The worship starts and I'm singing words I've sung 100 times, but they land new. It is well with my soul. I've always thought that song was about having peace when circumstances are good, when the bills are paid and the job is secure and life makes sense. But tonight I hear it different. Horatio Spafford wrote that song after losing everything, his business, his children, his stability. He wrote it from the wreckage, not after the rescue. And the wellness he sang about wasn't the absence of struggle. It was the presence of God in the middle of it. When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. I'm crying before the second verse, because it is well with my soul, not because my bank account is full, because God fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself, because he split a sea I thought was permanent, because he taught me that standing still isn't passivity, it's positioning for a miracle I can't manufacture. After the service, a woman I barely know approaches me. She's younger, mid-20s maybe, and her eyes are red like she's been crying too. "Can I ask you something?" she says, voice quiet, hesitant. "Of course." "How do you keep showing up when life's falling apart?" "You seem so steady, and I feel like I'm drowning, and I don't know how to keep pretending I'm not." I stare at her for a long moment and I realize, this is it. This is the why underneath the whole thing. God didn't just rescue me for my sake. He rescued me so I could help someone else find the path when they're standing at the water's edge, terrified and trapped and convinced there's no way out. I take a breath, and I tell her the truth. I'm not steady because I have it all together. I'm steady because I finally stopped trying to. 3 weeks ago, I was sitting at my kitchen table at 2 a.m. shaking over bills I couldn't pay, convinced God helps everyone but me. And he met me there. Not by making the bills disappear, but by teaching me to stand still and watch him fight. You want to know what that looks like? She nods. I pull out my phone and I show her my notes app, where I've been keeping the stand reset written out. 4 minutes every morning. It's not magic. It's just faithfulness. Slow breath. Tell God the truth. Anchor a verse. Name one next step. Don't run. That's it. That's what steadies me, not my strength. His. She takes a picture of the screen. Her hands are shaking the way mine were 3 weeks ago. What if I do it and nothing changes? What if you do it and you change? What if God's fighting for you right now and you just can't see it yet because you're too busy trying to fight for yourself? Her eyes fill with tears. I don't know how to stop. Me neither. But I'm learning. And if I can learn, you can too. We exchange numbers. I send her Exodus 14:13-14. I tell her to text me tomorrow after she does the reset, just to let me know she did it, just so she's not alone in the standing still. She hugs me before she leaves, and I feel it. The full circle moment, the wounded healer identity clicking into place, the purpose underneath the pain revealing itself like dry ground under parted water. This is who I have always been. You're just finally still enough to see it. I drive home that night, and I sit in my car in the parking lot for a long time, engine off, hands on the steering wheel, just breathing. I think about Israel on the other side of the Red Sea, looking back at the Egyptians dead on the shore, looking forward at a wilderness they don't know how to navigate, looking up at a God who just proved he can do the impossible. They didn't know what came next, but they knew who was leading them, and that was enough. I don't know what comes next either. The newsletter contract is steady for now, but what if it ends? The overtime is approved for 1 more month, but what if they don't need me after that? The bills are manageable, but what if something unexpected hits? The what-ifs are still there, but they don't own me anymore. Because I've seen God fight. I've watched him part seas. I've walked on ground that was water 37 days ago. And I know now, really know, that the God who brought me through once will bring me through again. The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. Exodus 14:14, KJV. I say it out loud in the quiet of my car, not as a wish, as a declaration. God fights for his people. He fought for Israel. He fought for me. He'll fight for that woman I met tonight. He'll fight for anyone who's willing to stand still long enough to see that the path forward isn't something we create, it's something he reveals. I pull out my journal and I write one final entry for today. Day 37. I am not the same person who sat at that table shaking. I am steadier, wiser, more convinced of God's faithfulness than I've ever been. The crisis taught me what comfort never could, that I am loved in my need, that struggle doesn't disqualify me from God's presence, that standing still is the bravest thing I can do when everything in me wants to run. I will never forget this, and I will spend the rest of my life helping other people find the path when they're trapped by their own Red Sea. Stand still, see. I start the car, I drive home, and when I walk into my apartment, I don't see bills anymore. I see testimony. I don't see struggle. I see evidence. Evidence that God is who he says he is. Evidence that he does what he says he'll do. Evidence that when I can't move forward and I can't go back, he is not out of options. He never was. I wake up on day 42 and the light coming through my window feels different, softer, warmer, like the world decided to exhale with me. I do the stand reset without thinking, the way my lungs pull in air, the way my heart beats without permission. It's not discipline anymore. It's liturgy, the rhythm my soul has been craving my whole life without knowing the name for it. Slow breath. Truth. God, you've rewritten my story. Teach me to live like I believe it. Anchor the verse. Exodus 14:13-14. The words so familiar now they feel like they're written on my ribs. Name the step. Send the second batch of newsletters. Deposit the check from my mom. Meet Sarah for coffee. Sarah, the woman from church. We've been texting every morning for 5 days now. Short messages that just say, did the reset with a timestamp. Proof that neither of us is standing still alone anymore. Yesterday, she sent me a longer message. I made the phone call I was terrified to make. They said yes to a payment plan. I cried in my car for 10 minutes. Thank you for showing me it's possible. I read it 3 times before I responded, because I wanted to make sure I said the right thing. The thing that points back to God instead of to me. That wasn't me. That was you being brave enough to walk what God opened. I'm so proud of you. This morning she texted asking if we could meet, and I said yes before I even checked my schedule, because I know what it's like to need someone to sit across from you and say, you're not crazy, God is faithful, keep walking. I get to the coffee shop first, order tea instead of coffee because my anxiety doesn't need the extra fuel, and also because I'm learning to pay attention to what my body needs instead of just pushing through. I sit by the window and I watch people walk by, everyone carrying their own invisible seas, their own pharaohs chasing them, their own tables covered in bills they're too ashamed to tell anyone about. And I wonder how many of them know that God fights for people who can't fight for themselves. I wonder how many of them are one stand reset away from seeing the path they've been convinced doesn't exist. Sarah arrives 10 minutes later, and I can see it on her face before she even sits down, the same thing I saw in my own mirror 6 weeks ago. Exhaustion wearing hope's clothes, fear pretending to be fine, the performance of okayness that costs more energy than just telling the truth. She sits, orders coffee she probably can't afford because that's what you do when you're trying to seem normal, and then she looks at me and says, I don't know how to do this. Do what? Keep going. Keep believing. Keep standing still when everything in me is screaming to run or fix it or give up entirely. I nod. I don't rush to answer. I just let her words sit on the table between us like an offering, something sacred she's trusting me with. And then I tell her what I wish someone had told me 6 weeks ago. You're not supposed to know how. You're just supposed to do the next thing. That's it. Not the next 10 things. Not the master plan. Just the one thing in front of you that God's already opened. But what if I mess it up? What if I take the wrong step? Then you take the next right one. God's not grading you on perfection, Sarah. He's walking with you through the process. You think Israel walked through the Red Sea in a straight line. You think they didn't stumble or doubt or look back at the walls of water and wonder if this was insane. They walked messy, but they walked. And they got to the other side not because they did it perfectly, but because God held the path open long enough for them to cross. She's crying now. Quiet tears that drip into her coffee. I feel like I'm failing, like if I had more faith I wouldn't be struggling. And there it is. The lie I lived with for years, the one that kept me isolated and ashamed and convinced that struggle meant God was disappointed in me. I reach across the table and I take her hand. Listen to me. Struggle doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're human. And God doesn't need you to be superhuman. He just needs you to be honest. The Israelites complained at the Red Sea. They panicked. They accused Moses of bringing them out to die. And you know what God did? He parted the sea anyway. Not because they had perfect faith, because He is perfectly faithful. She squeezes my hand. How do you know this? How are you so sure? Because 6 weeks ago, I was you. Sitting at a table at 2 a.m, shaking over bills I couldn't pay, convinced God helps everyone but me. And he met me there, not with a lightning bolt or a check in the mail, but with a whisper that said, "Stand still and see what I do." And I've been watching ever since. Every phone call that went better than I expected. Every dollar that showed up exactly when I needed it. Every person he sent to fight for me when I couldn't fight for myself. That's not coincidence, Sarah. That's God. And if he did it for me, he'll do it for you. We sit there for a long time, not talking, just breathing together in the space between panic and peace. And I realize this is what it means to be a wounded healer. Not that I'm healed completely, not that I have all the answers, but that my wounds have given me a language for someone else's pain, and my healing has given me a map for their path forward. Before she leaves, I write down the stand reset on a napkin and I slide it across the table. Do this every day, even when it feels pointless, especially when it feels pointless. And text me every morning when you do, not because I need proof, because you need witness. You need someone to see you standing still and say, "That's faithfulness, keep going." She folds the napkin carefully, like it's more than paper, like it's a lifeline. "Thank you," she whispers. "Thank God," I tell her. "I'm just the person he sent to remind you he's fighting." When I get home, I sit at my kitchen table, the same table where this all started, and I look around. The bills are gone. Not all of them, but most. The urgent pile is empty. The negotiable pile has 2 envelopes left, both with payment plans I can manage. The hold pile has been cut in half. The sticky note that says, "Stand still, see," is still taped to the edge, but it's surrounded now by other notes, scripture verses, gratitude lists, evidence of God's faithfulness written in my own handwriting as I watched it unfold. The room looks the same. The fluorescent light still hums. The calculator still sits on the counter. But everything is different. Because I'm different. I pull out my journal and I flip back to day 1, the night I wrote, "God, I don't know how to fix this, and I'm scared you won't." I read through the entries, the panic, the breakthrough, the small provisions, the phone calls, the reset, the moments I wanted to quit, the moments God showed up anyway, and I see it now, the full arc, the way God was writing a story I couldn't see from the first page. He wasn't just rescuing me from debt. He was rescuing me from the lie that my worth is tied to my performance, that struggle equals failure, that I have to save myself to be worth saving. He was teaching me a new language, the language of dependence, of trust, of standing still when every instinct screams to move. He was rewriting my theology from the ground up, replacing "God helps those who help themselves" with "The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace." And now I'm on the other side, not because the struggle is over, because I've learned to walk through it differently. I grab a pen and I write a new entry. Day 42. I woke up this morning and realized I'm not afraid anymore. Not of the bills, not of the future, not of what happens if something unexpected hits. Because I know now, really know, that God fights for his people. Not just in the Bible, not just for other people, for me. And that changes everything. I've spent 30 years believing I had to be enough on my own. 30 years carrying weight I was never meant to carry, fighting battles I was never meant to fight, saving myself because I was too afraid to ask God to do what only he can do. But standing at the Red Sea taught me something comfort never could. I am not my own savior, and I was never supposed to be. God positioned me in an impossible situation so that when he delivered me, I would know beyond any doubt that it was him. And now I know. I know the sound of his voice. I know the feel of his provision. I know what it's like to stand still and watch him split seas I thought were permanent, and I will never be the same. I close the journal. I stand up. I walk to the window and I look out at the neighborhood, at the ordinary afternoon light, at the world moving forward like it always does. And I feel it rising up in my chest. Not relief, not even gratitude, though both are there. Something bigger. Mission. The sense that this wasn't just about me, that God didn't rescue me so I could hoard the testimony, that the path he opened for me is meant to be a map for someone else standing at their own water's edge. I think about Sarah sitting across from me this morning, hands shaking around her coffee cup, asking how to keep going. I think about the woman at church last week who said, You seem so steady when really I'm just learning to stand on ground God keeps making solid under my feet. I think about my mom on the phone, crying over the shame she carried for decades, finally hearing that struggle isn't moral failure. I think about everyone I haven't met yet who's sitting at a table at 2 a.m., calculator blinking red, convinced they're alone. And I know what I'm supposed to do. I open my laptop, I create a new document, and I start writing. Not an essay, not a sermon, just my story. The bills, the panic, the stand reset, the phone calls, the provisions, the verse that became my anchor, the God who fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself. Every detail, every footprint, every moment I wanted to quit, and every moment God showed up anyway. I write it the way I lived it, messy, honest, scared, faithful, one step at a time. I write for 2 hours without stopping, and when I finish, I read it back, and I hear God's voice underneath my own. This is not just your testimony, this is their map. I save the document. I title it No Way Out, then God Split the Road Ahead. And I know, the way you know things in your bones before your brain can explain them, that this is just the beginning. That God didn't just teach me to stand still so I could stand still. He taught me so I could teach someone else. He fought for me so I could tell others he'll fight for them too. My fight for you often looks like wisdom arriving, help aligning, and steps appearing, one dry footprint at a time. That night, I post the story in a private group I'm part of, just a small community of people trying to follow Jesus through real life, not Instagram life. I don't add commentary. I just share it, and I say, if you're at the Red Sea right now, this is for you. By morning, there are 12 messages in my inbox. 12 people saying, this is exactly where I am. I've been sitting at my table shaking for weeks. I didn't know anyone else felt like this. Thank you for being honest. Can you send me that stand reset? I sit there staring at the messages and I cry for the 3rd time this week. But these are different tears. These are purpose tears, the kind that happen when you realize your pain wasn't pointless, that the valley you walked through is exactly what qualifies you to guide someone else out of theirs, that God wastes nothing, not the struggle, not the shame, not the nights you thought would break you. I respond to every message. I send the stand reset to all 12. I offer to pray, to listen, to walk with them the way people walked with me. And I feel it clicking into place. The reason underneath the rescue, the mission underneath the miracle, the wounded healer identity I've been stepping into without realizing it. By the end of the week, I've had coffee with 3 more people. I've prayed with 2 over the phone. I've sent the Exodus 14 passage to 5, and every single one of them says the same thing in different words. I thought I was the only one. That's the lie I'm learning, the one that keeps us trapped longer than the crisis itself. The belief that we're alone in our struggle, that everyone else has it together, that admitting we're drowning means we're failing. But the truth is this: everyone is standing at some kind of Red Sea. Everyone is hemmed in by something. Everyone is being chased by some version of Pharaoh. And the ones who get to the other side aren't the ones who never struggled. They're the ones who stood still long enough to see what God does when we stop trying to do his job. Stand still, see. On day 49, 7 weeks to the day since I sat shaking over bills I couldn't pay, I wake up and I do the stand reset and I realize something. I'm not doing it because I'm desperate anymore. I'm doing it because it's home. This quiet morning rhythm of breath and truth and scripture and surrender. This is where I meet God now. Not in the crisis, in the communion. Not because I need him to rescue me every single day, but because I've learned that his presence is better than any provision, that knowing him is the point, that the Red Sea wasn't just about getting to the other side. It was about seeing who he is in the crossing. I look at my calendar and I see Sarah's name penciled in for coffee this afternoon. She's been doing the reset for 2 weeks now, and yesterday she texted, I got the job. The one I interviewed for 3 weeks ago and thought I didn't get. They called yesterday and offered it to me. I cried for 20 minutes. God is fighting for me. I can see it now. I smiled when I read it, because I remember that moment. The first time you see the provision show up. The first time the path appears under your feet. The first time you realize God's not just a theological concept, but a present, active, fighting force in your actual life. And I know she's going to carry this forward too, that she'll become someone else's map, that the path God opened for her will help someone else find theirs. That afternoon, we sit at the same coffee shop, same window, same table. But she's different, lighter. Her hands don't shake when she holds her cup. Her eyes are clearer. And when she talks about the job, about the payment plan she's managing, about the stand reset she does every morning, there's something in her voice I recognize. Testimony. Not just information. Transformation. I want to help someone the way you helped me, she says. I don't know how yet, but I know that's what this was for. God didn't rescue me just so I could keep it to myself. I nod. Then you're ready. For what? To live like you believe it. To walk into ordinary life with eyes that see God's fingerprints everywhere. To help the next person standing at the water's edge. That's the sacred emergence, Sarah. That's what happens when you cross to the other side. You don't just survive the crisis. You become someone who can guide others through theirs. She pulls out her phone and shows me a note she wrote this morning. It's a prayer, simple and honest. God, use my mess for someone else's breakthrough. Let my testimony be their map. Teach me to live like the Red Sea was real, like you really fight for your people, like standing still and seeing is the bravest thing I can do. I read it twice, and then I look at her and I say, that's it. That's the whole thing. You just wrote the mission statement for the rest of your life. We talk for another hour about what it looks like to live this way, eyes open, hands ready, heart available. About doing the reset every day even when life gets easier, because it's not crisis management anymore, it's relationship maintenance. About looking for the Red Seas in other people's lives and saying, I know that water, and I know the God who parts it. About walking through ordinary days with extraordinary awareness that God is still fighting, still providing, still making roads where there were none. When we leave, she hugs me and whispers, thank you for standing still first. I drive home and those words echo in my head the whole way. Thank you for standing still first. That's what it takes, isn't it? Someone has to go first. Someone has to stop running long enough to see what God does, and then turn around and tell everyone else still trapped at the water's edge. There's a path. I walked it. You can too. That night, I sit at my table one more time. The bills are paid. All of them. The spreadsheet shows a positive balance that's growing instead of shrinking. The newsletter contract is steady. The overtime continues. My mum and I talk every week now. Real conversations about real things. No more performance, no more shame. The freezer has food. The lights stay on. The phone doesn't ring with numbers I'm afraid to answer. But the biggest change isn't external, it's internal. I don't wake up afraid anymore. I don't check my bank account with my breath held. I don't spiral when something unexpected comes up, because I know now that unexpected doesn't mean impossible. That God's fought before and he'll fight again. That standing still is always the first step to seeing salvation. I pull out my journal and I write the last entry. Day 49. This morning I woke up and realized I'm living the life I was begging God for 7 weeks ago. Not because everything's perfect, because I'm finally present, I'm finally steady. I'm finally convinced that God fights for his people, not just in scripture, not just for others, but for me. The Red Sea was real. The panic was real. The bills were real. And so was the path that appeared when I stopped trying to create it and started trusting the one who knows how to split water. I don't know what comes next, but I know who's leading me, and that's enough. I know the sound of his voice now. I know the rhythm of his faithfulness. I know what it feels like to stand still and see salvation I didn't manufacture, provision I didn't orchestrate, paths I didn't design. And I know my job now, to keep walking what he opens, to keep watching for his fingerprints, to keep helping others find the path when they're trapped at their own water's edge. This isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of the mission. I close the journal. I look at the table one last time. The same wood, the same fluorescent light, the same space where I almost gave up. And I whisper into the quiet, the Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. Not as a wish anymore, as a testimony, as a truth I've seen with my own eyes, walked with my own feet, learned in my own chest when everything else told me to run. God fights for his people. He fought for Israel. He fought for me, and he'll fight for you. All you have to do is stand still and see. Prayer, Lord, for the one sitting at the table tonight, cornered by life and afraid of tomorrow, Speak stillness into their chest and strength into their feet. Fight where we cannot. Open what we cannot. Part seas we've been staring at too long, convinced they're permanent. Teach us to stand still and see your salvation, not someday, but today, right here, right now. In the fluorescent hum and the quiet obedience and the small steps that become the dry path. Make us wounded healers. Make us map carriers. Make us people who've seen you split water and can't help but tell everyone else still standing at the edge. There's a path, and God holds it open. In Jesus' name, amen. Tonight's practice. Before you sleep, do these 4 things. 1. Do 1 4-minute stand reset. Set a timer. Slow breath. Tell God the truth in 1 sentence. Anchor Exodus 14:13-14. Name 1 next faithful step. Don't flee. Sit with him for 1 more minute. 2. Write down 3 categories. C. What looks impossible. Pharaoh. What's chasing you. Staff. What's already in your hand. Fill them in honestly. You'll be surprised what you see. 3. Take 1 courageous step tomorrow. Make the call. Cancel the thing. Ask for help. Sell the item. Do the 1 thing fear has been blocking. 4. Tape Exodus 14:13-14 KJV, where you'll see it first thing tomorrow. On your mirror, your coffee maker, your laptop. Let it be the first voice you hear before the world tells you what to fear. Fear ye not, stand still, and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will show to you today. For the Egyptians whom ye have seen today, ye shall see them again no more forever. The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. You're not alone at the water's edge. And the God who parted the Red Sea hasn't forgotten how. Stand still, see. The road is coming.